Welcome to Talent Unfiltered, located at the intersection of innovation and all things talent. Talent Unfiltered is presented by Intelligent and by HireWorks. HireWorks, talent forward. Now, here is your host, Ron Gauthier.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talent Unfiltered, presented by Intelligent and by HireWorks. I am Ron Gauthier, coming to you from Chicago. As usual, Talent Unfiltered is a podcast focused on all things talent, meaning anything that could affect a company's ability to hire gifted, committed, and diverse talent is fair game for our discussions. You happen to be looking at Denver, Colorado right now, which is the home of our guest today, Robert McFalls. He is the former IT talent acquisition manager at Dish Network and Boost Mobile, and he recently joined Twitter as the technical sourcing manager. He is a founding member of the Talent Champions Council, which is a really interesting private membership community for innovative talent strategy. And he's going to join us today to talk about the state of IT recruitment post-pandemic. And I know Robert a little bit. He's a great guy, and I am looking forward to this conversation a great deal. But before we get rolling, I want to invite all of you to visit Intelligent.com. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, Intelligent is our digital magazine and online community that is focused on helping solve the talent equation. And we are absolutely blessed to have a great set of contributors that include thought leaders in the space like Lou Adler, Craig Fisher, Shally Steckrell, Dean DaCosta, Dr. Tanja Coleman, and practitioners like Robert McFalls, our guest today. People who live this experience every day, and they're sharing their thoughts on how to make the act of acquiring talent better for everyone, candidates and companies alike. And we offer a lot of different kinds of content, written, audio, video, and some special into segments that are very digestible pieces of content with actionable tips and strategies that you can use right now. So come check it out. It's Intelligent.com. That's INTALEGENT.com. And once you're there, drop us a line. Let us know what you would like to see on the site. We will do our absolute best to accommodate you. Again, that is Intelligent.com. This show is available on Spotify, Buzzsprout, Soundcloud, and there is a video version, which some of you are watching right now. So if you dig what we do, then like, subscribe, and share on whatever platform you happen to be catching us. All right, let's get to it. Our guest today is Robert McFalls. He was the head of IT recruitment at Dish Network and Boost Mobile, and recently joined Twitter as a technical sourcing manager. He is a founding member of the Talent Champions Council, which is a leading private membership community for innovative talent strategy, and he joins us here today on Talent Unfiltered. Robert, how are you, man?
Thanks for having me. Today's good. As I mentioned before, TGIF. I live for my Fridays.
I think we all do, man. I think after, I don't know what it was like for you, but the pandemic for a lot of people was very traumatic. I've always been a person who thrived in environments where I was kind of on my own and doing my own thing. Liked camaraderie, liked to be able to collaborate, but at the end of the day, working alone really wasn't an issue. The challenge for me was being able to find new ways to collaborate, and sometimes a Zoom meeting just got exhausting. How was it for you?
Well, at Dish's culture essentially is very much about the collaboration and being on site. So my time at home was very limited. I think for the leadership, all of the people that I have direct reports, essentially, we were back on site as soon as it was at June. So I was able to still maintain like that people relationship aspect of the business, which is still a little hard to navigate still, right? You're in meetings with people with masks on and things of that nature. So it was a little challenging, I would say, for sure. But just in more of a virtual world, just because my team is distributed, how to get strategic, right? How do we keep everybody engaged, but also how do you decompress and how do you like turn it off? That work-life balance started to be a real thing of topic.
It's so funny. I was at an event last night where we were talking about work-life balance, and I've always hated that term of work-life balance. I just want people to live balanced lives, whether that has to do with work or their personal life or the good, the bad. Just try to keep yourself on an even keel. So, Rob, what we do here, first thing we do is 5 fast questions. It's basically a chance to get to know you. I'm going to ask you questions. If you've got answers, great. If not, you can pass, punt, whatever you want to do. So, first up, book you're reading right now.
Book. I'm real big on audiobooks now.
Okay.
I use, especially when I'm driving, things of that nature. I just turn them on. But right now, the new one I'm on is Above the Line. It's an Urban Meyer book. It's in the college football world. It talks about essentially some of his successes and essentially being able to provide life lessons in the football world, right? And then that's usually always the goal as a football coach, is you want to be able to develop young men, right? And so he really talks to a lot of experiences and how it helped shape him, but also help him lead others.
Yeah, Urban Meyer is he's a fascinating guy. Him and Saban. When you get to that level, that kind of a coach, they have a different mindset, right? It's just a different way of approaching things. Favorite food?
Favorite food. This one, I struggle to think about this one sometimes, but I usually.
Well, I like all food, man.
Right,
so it's like.
But I would say I'm a pasta guy. Whether it's spaghetti, if it's chicken Alfredo. I mean, I'm a go-to pasta. My wife gets mad at me sometimes because if she asks me what I want to eat, she already knows. So don't even ask, because I'll say, let's go down to the local shop down the street and get some pasta.
Nice. What I found though is I love pasta. I love anything carbohydrate. I really do. But the older you get, the harder it is to crank that off, and I just don't burn the calories like I did when I was a younger man. Okay, you get to pick here. Best or worst thing about your hometown?
How about I give a little bit of both? Okay.
Okay.
See. I was born in Denver. However, I did grow up in Tennessee for a bit.
Okay.
While I was transitioning from elementary to middle school, came back to Colorado in high school. But I would reflect on Denver just because I've been here the longest. I would say the worst thing and the best thing, it's like a bittersweet thing, is that it's just amazing. The place is just amazing, and there's so many people moving here, so that's the worst thing.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, I've been to Denver a bunch of times, and it's one of my favorite cities. I used to spend a lot of time like in Denver and Salt Lake, and places like that, and I just absolutely love that part of the country. Favorite band or music?
I would say I'm an old soul. I like your old school Motown hits. You look at my playlist.
Nice.
Sometimes my football kids, they're like, Coach, can we listen to something different? Because I bring the box and stuff. So I'm an old school guy.
That's funny. And then your go-to activity to blow off some steam?
If you haven't learned already, I coach football. That's it. That's how I turn it off.
Did you play football?
Well, I played all sports growing up. In college, I picked basketball. However, I mean, it's in me. It's in me regardless. I got my minor in coaching, and I knew I was going to coach in some respects.
That's got to be great when you're leading teams, which kind of leads me into my next question. You lead technical recruiting and sourcing teams. Some of them are pretty large, and you also recruit in an extremely competitive space, which is technology. My question to you to get this started is, given everything that we just experienced in the last 18 months, what's the biggest challenge that you've seen in recruiting now versus in 2019 pre-pandemic?
It's hot. The market is hot. Everyone is hiring. So what does that mean? You really have to dig in and understand what are the motivating factors for people and why, or if they are looking, and if they're not looking, understand why and what's missing, right? So in recruiting, one thing that I have found very invaluable in a sense is active listening. Listen to the person and why they may be open, or why are they looking, or why did you even get their ear? Why did they answer that message? Because a lot of times people don't know they're looking until that person is in their inbox or if their email. So active listening is this number one thing that I drill in with my teams, is just understanding the motivations and chime in on that, hone in on that, right?
Yeah, it's I think you're hitting on something that I think is really important, and I talk about it a lot, both on Intelligent and with clients, is that to me the key to moving recruiting to the next place, at least as it is for internal teams, is to get out of a operations process as fast as you can mindset and focus on building really quality, trusted relationships with the people that you're trying to recruit. And you have to understand, you're right, you have to be not self-aware of what it is about you that either excites or turns a candidate off, right? In your messaging and the way that you approach that candidate, you need to understand that. And I want to stick with this question for just a second. Do you think that the biggest challenge now is just the speed at the speed of the market and the inability of most recruiters or recruiting teams to kind of turn off that speed mindset and turn on a quality mindset? Or is that kind of where your head's at?
I would say that's definitely something that people have to do. You have to slow down, right?
Okay.
Slow down. The recruiters, you have to build relationships. Some
Thank
people
you.
are losing the art of the recruiting
Yeah.
aspect, right? We're in recruiting because we like people, right? Once you
Sure.
lose that aspect of people and you look at individuals as like a resource, which is, those are the terms that are utilized on the inside in,
Mm-hmm.
right? We need more resources. Well, we need more people. We need intelligent people. Let's make sure we're building those relationships. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just we're losing the humanistic part of the recruiting aspect.
I agree with that 100%. I talk all the time, and I know that I end up pissing people off when I say this, but inadvertently, leaders, C-suite typically, wants to fill a job as fast as they can because their whole business is based on speed and beating competition of the market with this or that. Unfortunately, speed doesn't always translate in every facet of your business. And when you push recruiters to go faster, recruiters don't have time to build those relationships, and as such, companies are relegated to being able to recruit whatever's available to them right at that particular moment. It's all reactionary rather than being able to look forward and go, okay, I know I'm going to need salespeople, or I know I'm going to need a Ruby developer all the time, so I'm going to become the Ruby development recruiting team in Denver or wherever you happen to be. So I appreciate your insight on that. The relationship piece of it is something that I bitch and moan about all the time. that I want people to work. And often, and you've talked a little bit so far about your background, which I think is really interesting. And recruiters tend to come from really varied backgrounds of education and experience. Your background has included working with high-risk youth, digital marketing, advisory roles, and education. And I'm always fascinated to understand how those roles prepare a person for their work as a recruiter and as a leader. And specifically to you, what skills should companies look for in their recruiters and recruiting leaders?
Yeah, this is a great question because no one
Thank
really
you.
wakes up and says, "Hey, I want to go be a recruiter when I grow up," right? I thought I was going to be a basketball player, right? Or then I
Yep.
thought I was going to be a coach right after. I
Yep.
mean, so really, honestly, what I have seen in the market and the things that I really love to see from a
Mm-hmm.
recruiter is just the ability to have a high emotional intelligence. Doesn't really matter the background, right? The degree allows us to say, hey, he can check the boxes, right? They can do some intelligent stuff in the nature, right? But I
Sure.
think it's really based on having a high emotional intelligence. And I think for me, my trajectory helped me be in a good place because I went through a human services degree. At that time, I thought I was gonna become a teacher. Really, before it was like I'm gonna become a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was like, well, I just want
Sure.
to work with kids.
Sure.
Next thing you know, I'm in education, and I just was like, I need to be challenged. And in IT and recruitment in IT, it's the challenging environment. It's a challenge. It's always changing. You have to roll with the tides, right? You can't stick with legacy recruitment philosophies. You can't do what worked 10 years ago. Shoot, a year ago, right? Pre-COVID.
Sure.
You can't do
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on one thing that is very important. This is the candidate journey, right? When you build those relationships, when you're building pipelines, you can then, when the person knows they're looking, they know Rob is the tech recruiter, right? I'm gonna hit him up because I know he
Exactly.
has good jobs. So you have to
Exactly.
build pipelines. Like you never
Yeah.
know when that person's gonna be looking, but if you build those relationships, right, then you're gonna continue to build those pipelines. And a lot of teams now, as you mentioned, right, they're moving to that type of organizational structure within internal teams. So now you're seeing that X, Y, and Z is now focused specifically on Ruby backend, right? Ruby or Python,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be, but you're literally
Sure.
seeing the evolving nature of recruitment, and it's really, I mean, it's hitting all organizations, and now at this point in time too, everyone's a tech company.
Well, yeah, every company's a technology company. I think that what we see in recruiting, at least in my experience, is that it doesn't matter whether it's technology, whether you're recruiting, banquet staff, whatever it is you're recruiting. The challenges are very, very similar. And what 2020 did was it upset the apple cart in the sense that it has inadvertently giving candidates much more control of their career than they've ever had before. And when somebody, I often talk about it this way, think about it in terms of digital marketing or consumer-driven innovation. When people think about buying a product, they do a lot of research. They only engage when they feel like they have enough information about a product. And so often, in this quest to go faster and faster and faster, we aren't able to give candidates enough information to make a really, really good decision, and that's very often why people leave. So I would beg to differ just a bit and say that I think, it's not just you not only have to specialize in a particular area, but you have to slow down, as you said, and take the time to get to know everybody who's a player in that space in your market. Whether your market is Denver, whether your market is the Mountain West, whether your market is national, you need to be the person that people go to and trust, that trusted resource, that they can turn around and call when the time is right. It's kind of sticking with the technical aspect of this, and we've talked about this being really competitive. It's probably one of the more competitive spaces that you can work in, because there's definitely more openings than there are people right now. Technologists are typically wary of recruiters for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that many recruiters don't have an understanding of what a technologist does and the kind of jobs that they really actually want. And it's really true, I think, that some developers, engineers go to great lengths to be as unreachable as possible. So I'd like you to give some advice to the younger recruiters out there. What are the 2 or 3 biggest mistakes that young recruiters can avoid to make themselves more successful and be seen as that trusted resource inside a tech company, beyond just building relationships and slowing down a little bit?
I tell this to my team, and overall, like specifically at Dish, I used to run a monthly call to go over sourcing strategies, because I saw there was a lack of organizational understanding around like what are the best practices in recruiting.
Sure.
And so what I really like, the number one thing is look at the person's profile before you start reaching out to them. 9 times out of 10, every recruiter you talk to, they use the shotgun method approach, and they're shooting every single person the same message. That's a way to get your message declined, or sometimes, right, you may get the wrong developer on the wrong day, and they're going to respond with something probably not so favorable. So
exactly,
like you said, take your time, slow down, understand who you're talking to, right? Connect the dots, right? You see the person went to the same school. Hey, I loved you went to Metro. Let's talk. Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about Metro. We don't even have to talk about software development. That can be secondary. So just slow down. It comes down to just being able to slow down.
See, to me, that's brilliant. I often tell people that the act of a recruiter, the function of a recruiter, is to develop relationships with people that you may want to bring into your organization sometime in the future. Because when you're under the gun to recruit that person today, that's when you do that shotgun approach. That's when you have that reactionary approach to how you're interacting with candidates, and that can just be a death sentence. Because these guys all talk. Even in Chicago's a bigger market, I think, than Denver, and everybody knows everybody, man. And as soon as you get the reputation of being somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about, or constantly bothering you or hitting you up with jobs that don't feel right or aren't a right fit for you, that gets around very, very quickly. Very quickly.
Those dish recruiters, right? They don't know what they're talking. I mean, I'm just giving an example, right? That's how it happens.
Oh, I thought you were saying that maybe the dish guys didn't know. Now that you were gone, they didn't know what they were talking about.
Hey, I think there's a learning curve for sure. You can see the level, just depending on your levels too, but also too, people are being complacent. So you can see it with the senior recruiters too, right? It's just one of those things. Is like, are you engaged? Because then you talk about the developer who isn't on these like LinkedIn's and so forth. Like, how do you engage with them? And that's where the pipelining comes into play, right? Understanding, knowing that person you talked to 2 years ago. Oh, Andrew's ready, right? Andrew's a quality
Exactly.
estet, and I know he's perfect for this job. Hey, Andrew, you interested in chatting about this role?
Sure.
I mean, it happens all the time. I have people on my back in my network that I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we talked about 2 years ago, but hey, I have an even better job for you now. And it's an easy conversation because I can reach out to them, and it's not as formal. It's like, hey, I got something. Let's chat for 5 minutes to see if it even makes sense, right? So
Sure.
for anyone in general, I mean, you just really have to be able to build those pipelines, right? Especially for those folks who aren't all these channels, because once they put their, like for example, one resource or tool that you'll find that a lot of developers are on that don't want to be found is Dice, right? They're going to go on
Mm-hmm.
Dice because they don't have LinkedIn's, right? But as
Right.
soon as you start blasting them with messages, they're going to turn their profile off and things of that
Uh-huh.
nature once they have enough, right?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting. There's a wonderful sourcer. Her name is Sarah Goldberg. I don't know if you know her. She is brilliant. And I remember we were at a conference together, both of us speaking on different things, and she was talking about sourcing strategies that she used and how she went about it. And she recounted a story where she had actually found a guy on YouTube, saw that he was talking about what she needed, then turned around and hunted him down through some searches, and the only way she could connect with him was to go to his Airbnb site. And I was like, that's really innovative. And if you don't get props for finding the guy that way, I don't know, I don't know how else you're gonna get to it. And that idea of being able to really have that relationship that you can call on later on. We used to do it I started my career on the agency side of the business. And I can remember my boss would walk in and he goes, I need this, 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 and this. And I'd go, I got the guy. But it was somebody that I had talked to 2 years ago or 6 months ago or whatever. And recruiters have memories like, to use an old term, like a Rolodex, right? You had this thing in your head that you were just ticking off people. That won't work. That guy, that's the one, right? And then you'd pull up that file and make the call. So I really love what you had to say there. So every good recruiter, Rob, has a trick up their sleeve that separates them from the competition. Maybe it's the way they approach sourcing. Maybe it's the way they engage with candidates and their focus on relationships. What's yours?
I would say it's twofold. In a sense, I would say that I always put myself in a position to be the hardest worker in the room. However, also at the same time, working smarter, not harder, right? So I see a lot of folks get burnt out in recruiting because they don't know how to have that balance, right?
Yep.
So I mean, for me, like I said, it's just, I always make sure, I may not be the smartest always, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to outwork you. Whether it may be in a more strategic sourcing fashion,
Sure.
Whether if I'm pipelining in a better fashion, if I'm being even more efficient with my calendar, making sure that I'm not just going to meetings for meetings, right? Going to a pre-meeting for a meeting, like stuff like that. Like, let's be efficient. So I'm really good at being able to put myself in a place where I maximize my time.
That's awesome. And I wish so many other people, part of that is emotional intelligence, right? It's an emotional intelligence, self-awareness that the places where you can get, sucked down the rabbit hole. And the next thing you know, you've blown 2 hours and you really have to be self-aware to be able to reel yourself back in and refocus yourself. And I think that's outstanding. Part of what I do at Intelligent and part of what we're trying to do, and I mentioned to everybody on the way in that you were going to be contributing some stuff. I'm really excited to have you along, man. I think you're a super sharp guy, and I'm looking forward to kind of your vantage point from the world of Twitter to see what that looks like and be able to share that with our readers. But one of the things we talk about on a regular basis is the disconnect between executive leadership and recruiting teams. And I break what I call the talent equation into 4 separate parts. There's the C-suite, there's HR leadership, there's talent leadership, and then there are external agencies, which, whether anybody likes it or not, you still need those from time to time. But the service that they need to provide, and you and I have talked about this before, the service that they need to provide might be different than it was 10 years ago, right? So and I tend to stress the idea that leaders misunderstand the role of recruiting and what it takes to actually attract and hire the best talent. Some people focus on speed to the point that how fast we can hire becomes the only thing that matters to them. And I think that that's a mistake. But I'd like to get your take on where companies, and I'm talking about executive leaders, are missing the boat in building successful talent functions.
I think I've mentioned this a little bit, but I would say from the executive standpoint, they are, again, the resources, right? They look at people, they are not even looking at individuals as people. They're looking at them as resources, right? How soon can we get the resource in? Versus seeing those individuals as people, right? And so I think the executives need to also too take the time and slow down. But also too, I think with Dish Network, I give that an example. The executive leadership was really bought into the recruitment process because they understand the market. So if you can get everyone on the same page and bought in and understand that everyone in here in this room, right, is a recruiter, everyone here is a brand ambassador, then you can get things done. I would say at Dish, it took a while for me to get everyone there, but once we started to get some offers declined, you see people backing out of interviews, that raises some flags, right? So it's one of those things is just trial and error, right? And you just got to get the executive leaderships involved. And as a leader, I did just really make it a point to make sure that I had a chance to get in front of the CIO, right? It was a thing where meeting with him weekly was a thing. Like, let's meet, let's talk about what's going on. Like, what are we seeing in the market? What's changing? So as a leader on the HR TA space, you really have to develop those relationships so that recruiting has a voice too, right? So I did really make it a point to now, at that point when I was with Dish, like I really honed in on that relationship piece, right? If I knew I needed to get a message out to all the IT managers, I went to Attila and say, hey, can we have your IT manager meeting and let me talk about hiring best practices or job descriptions, right? Because again, right now with the ever-changing nature of how competitive it is, you have to look at your entire recruitment process and understand, like, what can we improve, whether it's job descriptions, whether it's the approval process, whether it is just the interviewing process in itself. Like, is there 10 interviews, is there 5, is there 3, right? And that does equate to like the speed aspect too. So there's a lot of different things, but just relationship building with the execs and making sure they're bought in to what's going on and they understand too what's going on. I think that helps out. And so you'll see, it's a good thing, especially for Dish, because if some of the process didn't change prior to me leaving, they would not be able to build that 5G network. It'll happen. It'll definitely happen.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting because you go back to that idea of relationships again, and I do think that that's critically important. I think the thing I tell leaders when I talk to them is the best thing you can do is read The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, because it will show you, and I talk about this a lot, it will show you that when you have those relationships, all of the obstacles that typically slow a process down in terms of getting a person/resource into the company, that gets sped up because people automatically trust you. And I liken it to if you're walking down the street and you have a widget and you walk up to 100 people and you go, hey, I've got this widget, you should buy it. Hey, I've got this widget, you should buy it. Well, people are going to turn and walk away from you because they don't know you. Consumers are smart, and candidates are the consumers of your jobs, and you have to give them the space to be able to make decisions. And that requires that recruiting leaders think differently about how TA actually functions. I would argue that I don't want to get rid of speed metrics because I understand time to hire, but we also need to be looking at things like the number of new relationships, number of quality conversations, and how do we define that? Because if all we're measuring recruiters on is how fast can you go, we are always going to be disappointed because we're never going to go fast enough. We're never going to be able to satiate that, that desire to go faster and faster and faster. And I blame it in large part on, and I'm going to sound like an old man, I'm missing a cardigan sweater and a grass to tell people to get off of, but I liken it to, I blame it on technology in a way, because it's while it has sped up our ability to be able to find people, it's put up barriers of communication in some ways, and those barriers take a little longer to break down, given how wary people are of their data and bad experiences that they've had in the past. Last question, only got a couple of minutes left here. What's the biggest change that you see on the horizon for recruiting in the next 5 years? What's the thing that you think is going to fundamentally change how we do what we do?
I think number one is like I think you asked me a question around this earlier. Is just how do you stand out in a crowd of recruiters? Because at this point, I mean, you see it. Everyone's hiring recruiters right now, but also too, everyone's hiring. So
Sure.
how do you stand out? And so it just comes back to relationship building. So I think over the next 5 years, you're going to see that sourcing teams are going to become even more important than they are now today. You're seeing now the change. I'm seeing the change, right? The sourcing teams are being built up for every singular company. You go and look online right now. Every team has now. Every organization not only has a recruitment team, which is like manages the admin stuff, gets people through the process, but now it also on the sourcing side, right? So I think just being able to get people and talent building that those pipelines is going to continue to be the name of the game. And how do you stand out amongst the crowd? So whether it may, like you said, like Sarah did, she went to the Airbnb. So like, what are you going to do that's different than that person, right?
Exactly.
So I think it's
Exactly.
going to be they're going to have to be able to adapt and roll with the punches and be able to just think of different things of how to attract talent.
And it's really interesting. I'm having a conversation with some people. We're working on some stuff for Intelligent and a few other projects that we're working on. And I actually think, and I'd love to get your take on this. I know we only got a little bit of time here left, but I'd love to get your take on this. I actually think that the function of a recruiter over the next 4 or 5 years could change fundamentally as candidates take more and more control of their careers. I don't think we're going to be the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, in terms of where we're going to work, how we're going to work, when we're going to work, and people just aren't as afraid of remote work. They want things that fit their lifestyle. They want things that fit their life, not the other way around. And I think the biggest change will be how candidates control their information and interact with companies. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say twofold, just because you did mention something that just kind of brought a light bulb for me or just lit up for me is some organizations are already are having a hard time figuring out how to get people on site. I think Dish has a good understanding of how to do that. However, they have been experiencing some high attrition rates that are higher than normal, right? But you'll see it across the board. But now you're going to see the people that want to go work on site, they're going to gravitate to those organizations that are on site, right? So you're going to see a lot of changing hands right now. I think within the next year, it's going to continue to go. And then people are going to be in a place where now it's going to maybe be in more of a normal space, but you're going to continue to see that. And I guess the other part of your question, I mean, for technology in itself, it's going to continue to change. There's going to be more Zoom apps. There's going to be more tools and resources enabled to us to work remotely. So it's just one of those things we're all going to have to be able to
For
adapt.
sure.
And then
I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think that I've maintained for a long time that recruiting is a sales function underneath the HR team, underneath your people team. It's probably misplaced. It should probably be under marketing with a dotted line back to people. But I would take it a step farther from what you said. I think that, yes, recruiters' jobs are going to change. I think that there is going to be a revolution in, or not a revolution, that isn't the right way to say it. I think there's going to be a boom in the idea of the gig economy. I think more and more people are going to embrace that. And I think companies will have to change how they hire, who they hire, when they hire, and those people will maintain their control by being the ones who decide when they work and where they work, and the recruiter will play an integral role. Here's why you want to come take this gig. Here's the things that we can do. Here's all the things that you're going to learn here. They'll become that brand ambassador that I think most internal recruiters, not sourcers, but most internal recruiters thrive at. They're very, very good at that part, telling people why they should join, right? Rob, I really appreciate our conversation today. I had a great time. I learned a lot, and I'm excited to see the content that you're able to share with us over on Intelligent. Thanks for joining us today, brother. I really appreciate it.
thanks,
All right,
Ron.
bud.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the space and the opportunity.
Anytime, man. Anytime. All right, everybody. That is Rob McFalls. All right, that's it for today. A big thanks to Robert McFalls for taking time to share his insights and knowledge with us today. His understanding of the challenges that all technical recruiting professionals face make it easy to see why he has been so successful. If you're a tech recruiter, I am very hopeful that you got something that you can take back to work tomorrow or Monday, whenever you happen to be watching this. And if you lead a company that depends on technologists to succeed, I hope that you have a better understanding of the real challenges that leaders like Robert Robert face and how they strive to overcome those. Now, if you like what we did here today and you want to stay up to date, then like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice. Don't forget to turn on the notification button so you never miss any new content from us. Until next time, stay safe.